Hello, everyone. I'm Amy Kush, the Education and Content Director with the Women Food and Agriculture Network. And I'm joined here today with our Executive Director, Julianne Salinas. And we are grateful to be here today with Heather Medina Sauceda, both the President of the National Organization of Women in Natural Resources Conservation Service and the NRCS Assistant State Conservationist for Field Operations in Tangent, Oregon. We are super lucky to have the opportunity for this talk surrounding leadership, women, and conservation work. Heather is an accomplished, talented, and widely respected leader. So let's jump in to hear more about her work. And Heather, we would love to just hear about your journey to work in conservation. And initially starting with, what do you love about your work in the conservation field?
Thank you, Amy, and thank you for having me. And Jules, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here with Women for Food and Ag Network. I have been working with NRCS for about 20 plus years now as a conservationist. My original home area that I grew up is in Saginaw, Michigan, and I identify as a Chicana. My pronouns are she, her, and ella. My experience in my journey from conservation is, I would say, not a traditional NRCS route. I did not grow up on a farm. I grew up in a suburb of Saginaw. My parents, both as are Chicano or Chicanx, and just always took me outside. My grandparents also, we went fishing in our local rivers and streams, would go up to northern Michigan. And we would always have gardens. Also, my family, my parents had large gardens, and both my grandparents, the Medina side and the Gomez side, both had large gardens. And I always just enjoyed being in the out of doors. I've done a lot of different activities in the outdoors, and I believe for me as a female and kind of learning my way is, I think one of the important parts for me, wanted to say, is that identifying when you're young with teachers is important. And when I was in middle school, I feel like I had a very profound science teacher that really inspired me to learn more about science. And that really helped me to kind of explore science in other areas. And since my middle school time, I've always enjoyed science and nature, and that kind of led me to other things in high school, the love for recycling and take caring the earth and those type of things. um, i was I attended Michigan State University, and my major at Michigan State was zoology, environmental biology. I had a cognizant with called the Residential for the Study of the Environment, and also was a Drew student, which was named after Charles Drew, and that was for minority students. And those connections really helped me as a first generation college student going into study in Michigan State. And in many of my areas at Michigan State, I was in those science classes without my colleagues in the Drew program. In many of those areas in the environmental area, natural resources, there weren't many people that looked like me as a female or as a minority or BIPOC, Black, Indigenous person of color. And having those, my advisors in the Drew program and in the RISE program really helped the other students there, helped me as well, because in my experience in college was that many of my professors, who happened to be white and mainly male, had always told me that maybe I should do something easier, that maybe that this major wasn't for me. And those advisors and those other BIPOC students in my group really supported me and carried me through to continue with my major is natural resources. And their inspiration to participate in internships, such as a research experience for undergraduates in with the University of New Mexico. Really, that was a great opportunity for me to see other areas in conservation and getting to do some real life research as an undergraduate at a long-term ecological research station in near the Socorro, New Mexico. That was pretty awesome. I really enjoyed that. From that, I had an opportunity to take that research that I developed in presentation and then take that to a SACNAS conference, which is the Society for Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science. I presented that research, and that research was looking at the effects of black-tailed prairie dog on Butylopium and Butylogracillus, blue and black rama. I presented that research at that conference, and going to that conference and seeing other people of color that looked like me was very, very inspiring because I hadn't ever had that opportunity for people in a major similar to natural resources or conservation, and that was very inspiring. That led to another conference, attending the Hispanic Environmental Conference. And again, that was in California, I believe, and seeing other Latinos, Latinx that were interested in science, that wanted to care for the world, really inspired me as well. And attending another conference in New Mexico for that Hispanic Environmental Conference, there was a booth for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and that was for the Earth Team Volunteer Program. I learned more information about the Earth Team Volunteer Program, and it was right in my backyard in East Lansing, Michigan. And I signed up to be an Earth Team volunteer. I told my mom and dad that I asked them actually if I could be a volunteer, because in college I also worked. And I didn't get a lot of, I had student loans, but I didn't get a lot of financial aid. So asking my parents if it was okay to volunteer, and they said yes. They supported me. So I was a volunteer for NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, in the state office, and had a lot of great opportunities and learned a lot of conservation in NRCS. And from that conference or that volunteering, I made connections through the National Organization Professional Hispanic NRCS Employees, or NOPSI. As a college student, I went to the NOPSI conference in Hyannisport, Massachusetts, where I could meet other Latinos and conservation leaders with NRCS and other students like me doing conservation work. And that was, again, inspiring to see so many people there and learning opportunities in navigating through the federal government. So they answered a lot of my questions. Through that, I was, upon graduation from Michigan State with my bachelor's, I was offered a position as a soil conservationist in northern Michigan. And I was a soil conservationist for quite a few years in northern Michigan. Specifically, Sheboygan, Michigan is where I started in northern lower, and then I also helped out later on in the Upper Peninsula in Sault Ste. Marie. And throughout my college career and also with working with NRCS, I identified very had in my heart, in my head, just a drive and connection to Native Americans and tribal aspect. And as a Chicana, definitely I feel that in my heart, even though my grandparents didn't really acknowledge that. And I did a lot of work and training, and had a lot of opportunities to do trainings. NRCS calls them harmony trainings. And I got to go and do some tribal trainings in Wisconsin with the Bad River Band, and then also brought some of those trainings as a leader through the tribes in Sault Ste. Marie, tribe of Chippewa Indians, and was able to help in those trainings. And NRCS also provided me opportunity to take tribal law and working effectively with American Indians. So I took those classes at Lake State University and in northern Michigan was able to really connect with some of the tribes and other areas that were not recognized as federal tribes and landowners, and able to do great conservation work and also work with the youth. Did a lot of youth, which I really love doing. And we had a Protectors of the Earth camp, and that's one of my strong desires, connections, is in natural resources, connecting college students, K through 12, and letting them know that there's opportunities for them in natural resources and in the federal government, because I didn't grow up with a lot of people telling me about those career options. After a few years working in northern Michigan, I I had applied to the Peace Corps, and I served as a Peace Corps volunteer in the Dominican Republic along the Haitian border in the community of Puerto Escondido in the Dominican Republic from 2003 to 2005. I was an environmental education volunteer and was assigned to do ecotourism. So I was a Peace Corps volunteer there. I left NRCS. I went on leave without pay, and I worked in as a Peace Corps volunteer, and then had great learning opportunities in my community. It was a very rural community, a lot of deforestation along there. So the mixture of combination of cultures from Dominican culture and Haitian culture, and got to learn how to speak Spanish more. I did not grow up speaking Spanish in my home, even though many times for NRCS people kind of assumed that the way I looked that I spoke Spanish. I am I believe, fourth generation Chicana, and my family has been here for a long time. But my family also assimilated and did not want to speak Spanish. That was one reason I wanted to go into Peace Corps, was to do service work, but also to learn my language. And I learned how to speak Spanish in the Dominican Republic and do conservation work. I did water filter projects. I worked with a women's vivero group, tree planting, and a women's abeja group, bee group, and also did a lot of work with youth about AIDS and HIV. Also, girls volleyball team for empowerment, letting them know that they could to also, go to college and study, and that they didn't have to just stay in the community. So those, I still have connections to many of those girls that I worked with in Puerto Escondido, and we're still friends now, as I am still friends with some of those ladies that I worked with in Puerto Escondido. I came back to NRCS in Michigan, and I was then able to work with quite a few blueberry producers in the west side of Michigan. I was working in Allegan County, and now I'm able to work with a Michigan State Extension and others, connecting with blueberry producers. A lot of the blueberry producers in the west side of Michigan were Latinx, and that was a great opportunity for me to connect with them. There's NRCS in Michigan did not have a lot at that time, a lot of Spanish speaking employees. And that was one reason why I had asked to go to Peace Corps, and the NRCS actually brought me back, because I wanted to have a new skill to work with those Spanish speaking producers. So I've had a lot of opportunities through the NRCS employee organizations to network. And in one of my friends that I had met back in the day in Hyannisport through NOPSI, we met at a conference, and he was talking to me about an opportunity in Oregon. And he had mentioned, I should apply, and what do I like to do? And I was a district conservationist and a supervisor at that time. And I also play soccer and was coaching girls travel soccer. So I like coaching people to get to the next level. And he encouraged me to apply for that position. And my husband and I had talked about it. My husband, Juan, is an engineer, not with NRCS, but it's very hard as I'm not an engineer. Again, I'm a conservationist, and it was hard to move from Michigan to another state. It is a very common challenge for a lot of females and or other people of color to move, leave their family and go to another state. But for NRCS, if you want to move up in the agency, you really need to be mobile. And people, my previous state conservationist was really encouraging me to move to another state. My husband and I were able to become financially stable and get out of debt, and therefore we could live on one income, my income, and Juan could quit his job as an engineer, and we moved to Oregon in 2010. I was then the basin team leader for Lynn, Lincoln, Lane, and Benton counties in covering that area. And then shortly after, in January, Juan found a job as an engineer. But I do understand how challenging it is to have a dual income and moving around. And my husband has also said to other men now that they should support their wives and or partners, and that they can take turns. And that has been great to see my husband doing that and talking to other men, because then those men have then supported their wives and moved to other states and locations. In 2014, I took on additional areas. I expanded and then had to apply for a job and got a GS-13 and took on additional areas of southwestern Oregon, covering Jackson, Josephine, Coos, Curry, Douglas counties, additional to my duties. And one of the areas that I really love, going back to my time in Michigan, is working with tribes. We have been able to work with the Siletz tribe, the Cow Creek, expanding to areas of the Coquel tribe and Coos Lower Umpqua Indians as well, and have had setting that expectation for my staff that I supervise, and having them that's our tribal as our federal government, it's our trust responsibilities, that this is what we are required to do. And we've had such great successes with the tribes, and it's something that I am very passionate about, working with the tribes and getting conservation on the ground. We've done such great forestry work with the tribes here in my area, but also seeing the inspiration that my staff now take, expanding and with the tribes. I'm very close to Oregon State University here, where my office is in Tangent. And before I came, my staff had never done any outreach to Oregon State, and that is 15 miles down the road. And it's my passion, again, as well, my love, to make sure that we can share an outreach to students, letting them know the opportunities in conservation. And we participate very frequently at community colleges, at 4-H events with other Latinx communities, and at Oregon State, through any small farms conferences as well, and at Manners chapter meetings or SHIP meetings, Society for Professional Hispanic Engineers, letting those students know about the opportunities with NRCS. Because again, as I was in college and I didn't have a lot of people letting me know of those careers in natural resources or with the federal government. So those are a few things that my story of conservation and how I got to where I am, and some of the things that fuel me and that I love. And I love being out in the field with my staff. I love being out in the field with farmers and landowners, seeing the conservation work that we're getting on the ground, and in those relationships that we have been developing, and in seeing my staff also helping my staff to get to that next level and to whatever that leadership position is that they are. And I truly believe that anybody can be a leader. You don't have to be a state conservationist to be a leader. I know I'm also the president of Women in NRCS now this year, and we see many challenges that some people because of family life or because of dual income or other reasons, they're not able to move to other locations, other states. But I truly believe that it's our responsibility as other women and just in general to support other women, mentoring women, be it farming or conservation or in STEM careers, letting them know that they can do it and they have our support as well. Thank you.
Okay, Heather, I'm going to ask a kind of a tough question, and it's not one that we prepped you with. So I want to just throw that out there. So you touched on some amazing, and I really appreciate your vulnerability and sharing what you shared with us. I think that it's really moving. You touched on a number of challenges that you've personally faced as a Chicana. What would you say are the biggest challenges that Latinx women and non-binary folks face that white men, and particularly white men in conservation, might not understand and might not even know or exist?
Mm-hmm. I personally, for me, again, as a soil conservationist in Northern Michigan, I think, Jules, you were asking me about what are the barriers and challenges for Latinx women or Chicanas. Is one, having role models, is to see other people in STEM majors and natural resources in colleges, to have that support. Without my DREW program and the RISE program and those advisors that supported me and said that I could do it, I wouldn't have probably been here without that strong network. Because there's a lot of areas where in colleges and universities, community colleges, where we don't have that support. We don't have people that look like us. And as a first generation student to go to college, my parents really couldn't provide me a lot of the support because they didn't know some of that. I think other areas, once again, I said I'm fourth generation, and for a lot of BIPOC people and a lot of Chicanos, so Chicanx, is that our language has been taken from us and we've been forced to assimilate. And that leaves a hole in your heart when you don't have your language. And I've had an opportunity here in Oregon to attend the Latino Network, Unidos program, connecting with myself as a Chicana, and then as my language and my culture and leading with my culture. And a lot of times we're told that we need to assimilate either from our parents or the culture, and to kind of hide who we are. And in this leadership program with these other Latino leaders in Oregon, that we identify that we need to be vulnerable and strong and lead with our culture, and to lead also with our heart language. And so trying to speak Spanish whenever I can. I'm a recent mother now. I have 2 children that we have adopted or in guardianship, ages 12 and 6, and really practicing our language here at home so that they can identify as Chicanx and have their language, because that is a huge area where is a challenge. And when I was a soil conservationist, many people, like I said, assumed I spoke Spanish, and I was not fluent. I took Spanish just like anybody else would in middle school or high school or college. So I
You know how
wasn't
to
fluent.
say things like "that's a dog" under the table.
I could go to donde está el baño, those
Yeah,
type of
don't tell
things.
baño. Por favor, ¿dónde está el pipa? Gracias.
Yeah, but not until I went into Peace Corps could I become more. I never say I'm fluent, but I know Dominican Spanish, and I continue to learn my language, and especially in ag and natural resources. There are not a lot of professionals across the country. Some areas might be different, for example, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California, where there is a large amount of Spanish-speaking natural resource program managers or conservationists. But in some areas, there are not a lot of BIPOC Spanish-speaking people, or just conservationists that speak Spanish. And it's really important for a lot of our landowners that you can speak in their language, and it provides trust with those people as well. And that has been really helpful for me. So those
How
are some of
many,
the areas that I think are some of the challenges. But also one of the challenges that I experience as a soil conservationist also is not having female leadership to be a mentor. I've learned about there's bees, there's angry bees and happy bees, and then there's some supportive bees, is women, queen bees. And unfortunately, some women believe that because they went through hard times, that they should make it hard for other women. And sometimes other women don't support other women. And that was my experience as a soil conservationist, is that I had a female that was very challenging. And at one time, I wanted to quit my job because of the challenges she made in my life. But my network of the Hispanic and NRCS employees would not let me quit. And my husband would not let me quit. And that those are some of the challenges is when other, especially women supporting women, when you don't have that, that makes it very hard. But you know, I those are just some of the areas that I've seen challenges for myself.
Heather, thank you for your, not only your vulnerability, but your just honesty. It's so refreshing and I think really important for folks to hear. Thank you. Not everyone is courageous enough to share.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think we talked earlier about nitty-gritty numbers, and we were curious how many BIPOC women currently make up NRCS?
I had asked some of our other people that have access to some of the numbers, because it's actually quite hard to find. And overall, I believe the total numbers that we have, total women working for NRCS at this snapshot in time right now is, I believe, glasses, I think it's like 4,000. 4,012 women we currently have in the Natural Resources Conservation Service. That's total women.
Okay.
And on that, how many is that? What percentage of total employees is that? Do you know?
How many total employees? I don't know today's snapshot. That doesn't include the snapshot of total employees here. But right now, the minority or BIPOC farmers, excuse me, employees is 7.5%. And that's 7.5% of the 4,012 women.
Okay.
And those are minority females.
Okay.
Not total. I don't have the total minority numbers. And we have been currently doing a lot of direct hires, meaning we're hiring NRCS positions for outside employees. We're told not to look at people that are currently NRCS in those panels. So we've had quite a few positions across the country, and the charge from the chief of NRCS is to really diversify those as well. The other program that isn't here but shows is our Pathways program, is our internship program. And we have been charged by the chief of NRCS, Mr. Terry Cosby, to also making sure that we are looking for, really good candidates, but also for our students, making sure that we're looking at diversity as well. And that is for Black, Indigenous people of color, but that's also for females as well, and for LGBTQIA+.
Great. I think I shared with you, I saw a guy that I met on TikTok. I started following him and vice versa. And he's in, I don't think he's in NRCS, but he's a conservationist. He's in the conservation field. He's never identified whether or not he's an NRCS. But one of the things, so the way I met him was, came across my For You page. And, you know, he says, I recognize that I'm a white guy in conservation, and that makes up most of us, right? That we're white guys in conservation. He said, I want to extend, you know, my knowledge and my skills and to really support any women, and particularly Black Hawk women and LGBTQIA women or people that, you know, want to get into conservation. Like, I want to, you know, I'm willing to help them in any way possible. I'll go over their resume. I'll help you do some mock interviews. I really want to encourage that. And my first reaction was, oh my God, that's so great. And then my second reaction was, why are you, it's like you're teaching us the passcode, but you're not just blowing open the doors, right? Like, I mean, it's a subtle difference. And it's not to be, I mean, it's not a criticism of him at all, because I think he's coming from where he's coming from, but it's just, it was, to me, it was that was really great that you offered to, you know, do resume reviews or to help with mock interviews. But how about, instead of teaching the password to the clubhouse, we just like changed the lock, you know, like, so, and what would that look like, right? Like, I started going, what would that look like? So anyway, I'm curious of if that would be your take, or if you have a different take. Like, what does blowing open the door to the clubhouse look like?
That's a great question. Through Women in NRC, the mission for Women in NRCS is to provide women with training, opportunities, and mentoring to develop into their fullest professional potential. And I've been involved with WIN maybe since 2017. I see, you know, WIN, Women in NRCS, has provided me with a lot of great connections and networking to other women, and not and other women, but also other NRCS leadership, especially men. One of the steps before me joining WIN, I was in the NRCS Strategic Leaders Program development training, and that was for GS13s. And in that program, I think there was 6 or 7 of us females that were in that program. And in that, we were able to network with other senior women that are leaders in NRCS, to be mentored by them, and then also to be mentored by other males in leadership, which was a great connection for me. And being able to talk to NRCS senior leaders in Washington, D.C. and around other states, and finding that support for other males that are out there. And I feel there are many male allies out there that want to help and see women succeed. I see many state conservationists that are males that are making sure that their state and staff are being very diverse and open, and looking at hiring females and BIPOCs. Our current chief of NRCS, Mr. Terry Cosby, is definitely pushing it forward also. In the meeting at the Soil and Water Conservation Society meeting last week, I think it was last week, he mentioned again, NRCS is really looking to diversify NRCS as well, and leading with that again as one of the top 2 priorities. And the other priority is climate change as well. And I see many men looking to support women, and they recognize that they and NRCS and USDA and Secretary Vilsack and the new administration recognize that we have to have employees that reflect our civilian workforce, but also our customers. And we have a lot of female customers out there. And as you all know, in some of the learning circles that you do, in some of the learning circles that American Farmland Trust does with Women Talking Circles as well, is that sometimes those women need other women to talk to and to relate to, And we have seen where a lot of that communication, taking that time to develop that relationship and walk someone through these complicated forms and paperwork for the government, taking the time to go out in the field, teach about soil health, technical assistance, not only for all of our employees or all of our customers, but especially women in our BIPOC farmers and landowners, is that we have to have those diverse people, especially women, that can relate. And so I do see the culture of NRCS is changing to be more inclusive. It does take time. And the other thing that we have many great female state conservationists that are supporting us as well is through Women in NRCS, is our advisors in helping us. But the connection to making sure that the mentoring is there for women, that they can not be afraid to take the leap. There's challenges with during COVID with childcare as well, and that is when president and connecting with our members throughout the country. That is one of the things that I heard loud and clear from our WIN members, is childcare is extremely difficult when they have their children and then trying to take and do their jobs, but also, when COVID first started, teaching also. And that was very challenging. And we do have a flexible telework policy, but it takes a toll on people. And there's many working parents out there, and that's a challenge. So I know, again, women in leadership and also some of the men are helping to break down some of those doors. NRCS is having a national recruitment strategy as well. And we're also having our food production, egg conservation sector. The business center is looking at developing more agreements with other females, universities, to attract more females. So I do see things changing for the positive, and we just need to continue this great momentum that's going forward.
You touched upon many of WIN's Women in Natural Resources goal statements, just right there. And just for the sake of our audience members, to read aloud some of WIN's goal statements, I just like to highlight some of the main vision here, including networking, supporting, and advancement opportunities, specifically the improvement of those, to serve as a liaison in the development of family-friendly employment policies, which you just specifically touched upon. For example, offering teleworking as an option, but again, that's not always the perfect solution. Addressing current workplace barriers that impede the growth and advancement of women, upward mobility, specialized training, and motivating female employees to be proactive in creating and achieving a successful career with NRCS. And I'm going to kind of go off script here. The leadership competencies that you, Heather, have utilized that might be difficult to articulate, I'm curious, how do you see WIN? How do you see WFAN? How do you see any organization that is committed to advancing positive climate action planning? How do we bundle all of these things together, right? The subtle piece where you flagged, for example, for someone as myself, as a white woman in an organization, it might not be as easy or immediate for me to see, like, oh yeah, a challenge for Heather that she mentioned in her life was having to move to a different state. Just that in itself. How do we bundle, or how do we separate? Do we bundle or do we separate all of these pieces so that as women and non-binary folks seeking to work together, what do you think are some of the key leadership competencies that you've used or developed to help folks push the needle towards a more like sustainable, livable future, as I see like the 10th day of hazy, smoky skies here where I am. And I saw on Instagram someone flagging, yes, there is grief and it is literally suspended in the air right now. And it's hard. And you have just pushed through so much more than I think we can even know in this small space of time that we have. And I know I just asked you 20 questions, which is like an interview no. But if anything in there resonates, I would love to hear.
This year, the Women in NRCS, we recently updated our strategic plan, and we took our WIN was developed in 2011 by a group of women that had seen a need. There was no other organizations in NRCS supporting women. There was other organizations like the Hispanic NRCS employees, and Black employees, and things like that. So they wanted these women had the forefront and the vision to see a need to bring in other women together, and created a great policy and bylaws and set the foundation for women in NRCS. So we are definitely standing on the shoulders of those great women that came in the forefront for women in NRCS. So when we are reviewing our strategic plan this year for the next 5 years, and that is for 2021 to 2026, is that we really wanted to taking from some of the lessons from the past, but also building on that, are the people that developed WIN definitely had inclusion and diversity, and making sure that that was a standing point for NRCS and for WIN. And we wanted to carry that through into this current strategic plan. And I think that's important for WIN. We can lead with diversity. We're not just a women's organization, but it's for all people. And as a supervisor also in working with college students and pathway students or interns, we are working to, and we see a need for addressing and helping some of those college students to have mentors, showing them the way through the process through NRCS, but also those current pathway students, the employee organizations, are really making sure that we're available so that they can see us, that we're there to support them as well. And I've learned a lot of lessons. I've had a lot of trainings outside of NRCS, and just one of the recent trainings that I've had from Equality USDA and one of my good friends, Megan Walter, is just a pronouns training, identifying, my pronouns, learning how to say that and be confident in that. But when I say that, and then creating that environment for either my staff or my pathway students or the other people that I'm trying to connect with. And Women in NRCS is partnered with Equality USDA to making sure that we can learn and become more knowledgeable, how to be more inclusive, how to have a pronouns training. We've also had trainings that Women in NRCS put in conjunction with the Center for Diversity and Environment on implicit bias as well. And the Center for Diversity and Environment was also leading and showing us that the amount of farmers out there, and looking at the ag census, is that farmers, Black, Indigenous, people of color, those farmers, especially women, are very severely underrepresented. For women in NRCS, we've been grateful this year to be the president and taking on and leading with our National Council to include that diversity, equity, inclusion. And I can say that our membership is growing, and I truly believe that having this wholeheartedness, vulnerability, as Brene Brown says, is making sure that we are connecting with all NRCS. And WIN is not just for NRCS employees, it's open to all members. And one of the women that we have in common commonality with is Jean Eels, who works very closely with Women for Food and Ag Network, and she's worked very closely with women in NRCS and our WIN barrier assessment, her and her staff. And we've identified some of those barriers. We've worked with Jean on that in our WIN National Council. We provided those reports to NRCS leadership team. They currently are utilizing our results from the WIN barrier assessment to look at what are some of those challenges, what are opportunities, where is the partnership. And again, like I said earlier, now is the time. Right now we're in a good environment to continue to move forward, to address, could continue to do better for diversity, equity, inclusion. And I know our National Council for WIN supports that. And I hear a lot of the support from NRCS senior leaders supporting that as well. And it takes us, it's not just NRCS, it takes WIN and other employer organizations. It takes partnering with Women for Food and Ag Network. It takes all of us to lift everybody up and to provide that supportive environment. And I believe I've been a member of WFAN for about maybe a year now. And I had an excellent, the trainings that WFAN has provided me as a member has been excellent. I loved the training that was last year in the conference, and that's where connecting. There was a BIPOC section, and that's where I got to meet Jules and some of the other farmers and staff from WFAN, and that enabled me to make these strong connections. And that is what the world is about. I could be in the Dominican Republic or Michigan or Oregon, but this connection, we are all connected and intertied together. And if we are going to make any movement progress for all of us, then we have to do it together. And Women for WIN is looking to partner with other organizations, women organizations, any organizations that want to carry our mission forward.
You're muted. Amy.
Sorry, thanks guys. Heather, I think you just named it, working together. And yeah, we're so fortunate at WFAN to be in partnership with you. And Jules, I just want to leave space if there's any ending questions that you had for Heather.
I am so appreciative of you taking the time to talk to us today and to share all these. I've got a million questions more in my head, but probably a conversation best held over some beer or matcha or whatever your poison is.
Little kombucha.
Kombucha, lo que sea, yeah. Cualquier cosa. I would love to do it. But yeah, I just really appreciate in that you taking the time, but also just really summarizing in the last, I'd say 2 minutes, that was such a beautiful summary that, yeah, we're all connected and we have to move forward together. And, I think we have more in common than our differences. And we got to stop being defined by our differences and more defined by our commonality, but also respectful of the challenges that, other people have and are facing, right? So it's yeah, I think it's wonderful to hear, and it's so aligned with what WFAN is thinking as well, in our own as we're doing our own strategic planning and looking to the future. So I'm excited to continue and grow this relationship with NRCS and with your members, our members, who are often intersectional, so it's great. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And I don't know, Amy, I don't know if you want to close us out any other way.
I just want to, thank you, Heather. We're grateful for you and the work that you do, and really excited to be able to share this with our members. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both.
Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, you too.